Today's topic of discussion, why you can't see the change yet. Listen to me when it feels like nothing has changed. You've done the work, all of the evidence gathering and the small decisions, and those gaps that you've been paying attention to for weeks now, or maybe even longer. It's those same thoughts that continue to show up. It's those same doubts, and sometimes that old version, it still wins. So that question will creep in. Is any of this actually even working? Or have I just been going through the motions, telling myself about a story, and the change hasn't even been happening? But here's what I want you to understand today, because it changes everything about how you judge your own progress. Change isn't something that you feel whilst it is happening. It's something that you will only see afterwards, and usually much later than you would expect. And by the time that it's obvious, you rarely remember the exact day that it started. And there wasn't a specific day, there was an accumulation. It was invisible the whole way through, and then it eventually crossed the line that you could not see coming. So in this video, I'm going to show you why that's not a flaw, and this is how change works. It's the actual mechanism, and once you understand it, it doesn't feel like it's working yet, it stops being evidence of failure. So here is why change feels invisible whilst it is happening. And here's the part that no one is explaining properly. You experience your own life in real time, one day at a time, and each day feels almost identical to the one that came before it. The difference between a Monday and Tuesday is tiny. So if you're basing your change on, do I feel different from yesterday? You never will. No single day is different enough from the one that came before, so you won't even notice. This is the same blind spot as watching a clock's hour hand. Stare at it and you'll swear that it's not moving. But if you look away for 3 hours and you then came back, it's clearly moved. But the movement was always happening. You just can't perceive it at the resolution of the right now. So identity, it works the exact same way. It's not that the change isn't occurring day to day. It's that the day to day is the wrong resolution to measure it. And because you can't feel it accumulating, your brain will fill the silence with a much louder, much more available explanation. And nothing is happening. That explanation, it feels true because it matches while you can directly sense it. So remember, you're trying to feel a change that only becomes measurable from a distance. And by judging it day by day isn't only discouraging, it's measuring the wrong thing entirely. And here's the part that trips people up even more. Why these obvious moments come far later than you expected. Even once enough has shifted from underneath the surface, it still don't become visible right away. There's a lag. Think about ice on a lake. The temperature could be rising for hours before the ice starts to visibly crack. The change was real and was ongoing the whole time, but nothing observable actually happened until it crossed a specific point. And right up until that point, from the outside, it looked exactly as if nothing was different. And this is why people quit at the worst possible moment. They've already done most of the work, and the shift has already mostly happened underneath. But because that visible proof hasn't shown up yet, it feels exactly the same as week one. No different and no more working than when they started. And the gap between actually changed and visibly obvious, it's not a fixed, predictable distance. Sometimes it can be short, and sometimes it can be frustratingly long, and there's no way to know in advance of which one that you are in, which means the only reliable strategy is to keep going, regardless of which one it turns out to be, because stopping early does not make the gap shorter. It just means you're never going to find out how close you actually was. So remember, the proof always arrives so much later than the changes itself, and quitting just because you can't see proof yet does not mean that the change wasn't real. It means you stopped one stretch short of finding out. So here's how to actually know it is working without the feeling. If you can't trust the feeling and you can't predict the timeline, how do you know if any of this is actually even working? You stop by checking the feeling and you start checking the record. Across this whole series, you've actually got evidence sitting right there if you actually wanted to look for it. Not so much of a feeling, but actual specific checkable facts. And are you catching that gap between who you say you are and how you're living faster than what you're used to? Are you noticing your environment's pull instead of just being swept along by it? Or are you still choosing to act as the new version, even on those days where it doesn't feel earned? So when pressure hits and that old pattern wins for a moment, are you separating that moment from the story that you used to tell about it? Is the week-to-week trend more in your favor than it isn't? Because they're not feelings. They're observable facts about how you're actually operating, and they're the only honest measurable stick available, because they don't rely on something as unreliable as, do I feel transformed formed yet. So if those things are true, even slightly or even inconsistently, then the change is happening. It's just running on a timeline that your feelings haven't caught up to yet. So don't ask, do I feel changed? Ask, am I operating differently than what I was? Because the second question, that has an honest answer. And the first one almost never does. And a time in my life where I felt like I couldn't notice the changes happening was with content creation, where I was creating Instagram reels, starting to step into YouTube. I was wanting to get into the world of UGC, which is user generated content, so I could start to work with brands and start to create ads and just be part of a bigger ecosystem and be able to monetize my creativity. That was something that I was really focusing on. And I would create content and I would spend days planning and scripting and doing whatever else, and it felt like it was getting to a point of, is this ever even going to pay off? And then all of a sudden I started to have major brands reach out to me saying they love my authenticity, they love the message I provide, they love the way that I'm helping other people and that I'm sharing my message and that I'm unapologetically myself through my content. And everything just seemed to happen at once. The emails started flowing in, the offers started flowing in, the views started flying up on the YouTube, the subscribers started flowing in, the messages and DMs started flowing in, and I cannot turn around and pinpoint it to one specific day when the change happened. But what I can pinpoint is all of those days that contributed through compound efforts to the attainment of me stepping into the business model I'm part of now, and the content that I am creating and the vision that I have is really stepping into fruition based off of those compounded efforts, not just down to one specific day. I just stayed the course and I trusted that it would all pay off in the end. So here's 3 things on what to do whilst you are still waiting for that proof. Step 1, stop using do I feel different as your measure. Check what it is you're actually doing and not what you're currently feeling, because the feeling is going to keep lying to you, but the behavior, that won't. Number 2, expect there to be a delay. Decide in advance that a gap between visible change and real change might be longer than what can feel fair. That way, when that obvious proof hasn't shown up yet, it confirms what you already expected as opposed to confirming your doubts. And number 3, keep pushing past that point where it feels pointless. That point where it feels like nothing is happening and you're tempted to stop, it's usually closer to the visible shift than it feels like from the inside. Not always, but often enough that quitting is the single most expensive decision in the whole process. So listen to me when it feels like nothing has changed. It may not feel different yet, but that is not proof that it isn't working. It's proof that you're trying to feel something that only shows up when you look back, not when you're standing inside of it. That change has been happening in every video in this series, in all of the evidence that you've been building, in the gap that you've been closing, in the environment that you've been shaping, and the votes that you've been casting. It's mostly those moments that are too short to notice in real time. You do not get to pick the exact day that it becomes obvious, because nobody does, but it does become obvious for the people that don't stop one stretch short of finding out. So stop measuring today against yesterday. Look at the operating questions instead and keep going. This is the final video in the identity series, and everything that we've covered across these 7 videos fits together as one connected system. So I'm going to be summarizing it all together in my hub video, the identity shift map, so you can see the entire picture in one place. Make sure you go and watch that next. So drop a comment below. Looking back, is there a change in you that you can now see clearly, but you couldn't see it all whilst it was actually happening? And don't forget to subscribe so the next video in this series finds you when you need it. My name's Harley. Do the work, trust the process, and I'll see you in the next one.